monkeys are go.
Astonishing.
don't recognize you. Boy, you look confused. Shadows lurking in the dark. They're out to get you, want to control you. Don't lose yourself in the fog. Take a deep breath, hold on. Face the demons you fear till they're gone. Don't be fooled by their charm. It is time that you sound the alarm. You're bewitched by the devil's lullaby. Dance away in the dead of the night. Hear the voices humming in your mind. He will never let you out of sight. Devil's lullaby. Devil's lullaby. Falling for his lies, angels in disguise. Hear him calling out your name. Web of illusions, buried solutions. Fight the raging hurricane. Take a deep breath, hold on. Face the demons you fear till they're gone. Don't be fooled by their charm. It is time that you sound the alarm. You're bewitched by the devil's lullaby. Dance away in the dead of the night. Hear the voices humming in your mind. He will never let you out of sight. You're bewitched by the devil's lullaby. Dance away in the dead of the night. Hear the voices humming in your mind. He will never let you out of sight.
I've been in and out my mind since I hit your phone. I've been counting up.
Hello everyone, I'm Tech and take this like your exclusive first impressions on the all-new G522 gaming headset by Logitech. So this are hitting the trail June 16th for £139. So if you're thinking about picking them up, stay tuned for my full review coming soon. But for now, let's dive into, well, first impressions and what I think of them after having it in the studio for a week and a half. Basically. So let me kick things off with, well, all the design and compatibility upgrades. So Logitech have put a lot of effort to improve the fit of the G522 and you can definitely feel the difference. So first of all, the ear cups, yes, you cannot twist it around, but they are now wider with an extra layer of memory foam to help, well, cushion and cool your ears down during those long gaming sessions. The new fabric feels softer and more durable, making it super comfortable to wear for hours. Yes, it's fully built out of plastic, but don't let that down. They are super flexible overall, and they do feel really, really premium. Now, the headband itself have been upgraded as well. The suspension band is now reversible, so you got a flatter side on one side and a little bit more of a bumpier side on the other, and you got two colors as well. But this design helps you to improve the weight distribution more evenly. Plus, well, it's breathable, so it does help breathe the material to last longer, and you do have 2 points of adjustability, if you can see, on the left and the right as well. And as I said, you can turn it around, and Logitech have told me that you can buy them separately to customize, well, your design. So okay, let's talk about sounds, because this is where the G522 really shines. So the audio quality is impressively detailed and immersed. So it's featured the new or self-contained acoustic modulars that isolate the driver to improve less left and right, meaning that you don't got all the circuit in that side, and it's going to impede the audio, the driver itself, to do different type of sound from left and from right. This is all a self-contained now that Logitech have worked on, and it look way better. And what does actually mean? Well, it's a better location accuracy in games like, well, Apex Legends, Call of Duty, CS2, or any FPS. So really, you are able to pinpoint footstep, gunshots with ease. Plus, with the 40mm Pro G driver, you get distinctive audio layers, even with music, effects, dialogue, and chat going all on once. You are going to be able to, well, see and feel how clear and balanced all the sound actually sounds. And the bass. Logitech have completely isolated the acoustic modulars to give you better control and a richer, more powerful bass response. So whether you are playing a action-packed shooter or listening to some music, the bass hits hard, but without drowning the rest of the audio. That I think that's actually really, really important here. Now, I put OBS running on the background, so the audio that you're listening right now is the audio coming straight from this microphone. And the G522 come with a detachable 48 kilohertz 16-bit broadcast quality microphone. So this is the higher bandwidth microphone you are gonna find in a gaming headset, and it's deliver crystal clear voice clarity whether you are chatting with teammates or streaming. Plus, with the Blue Voice capability via the G-Hub software, you can customize the microphone to get the perfect audio. But just let me know how this actually feels. So 1, 2, 3, 4, just how does it sound? Just let me know in the comment section below. Plus, when it comes to connectivity, the G522 give you options, like a lot of options. So you got 3 ways to connect this bad boy. You got the ultra fast Lightspeed wireless Bluetooth dongle that we got here, and this is just plug and play, and they just go straight on it. You got Bluetooth for a little bit more flexibility across devices, and you also got USB Type-C cable included in the box, and that cable will charge a device and also transmit audio for a lower latency. And yes, I did say you charge it with the USB-C at the bottom. And battery life is impressive. You get 40 hours of use with the RGB on, and yeah, they do have RGB. And you can push them up to 90 hours once you turn the RGB off through the software. So it's perfect if you've got some interrupted gaming sessions. Now, speaking of battery, Logitech have made a great stride in battery health. So the G522 features the all-new battery health option in the G-Hub, and that let you cap your battery charge at 80% with health reserve, long battery life. And it's a small thing, but it's definitely something that we're going to appreciate. But they also have partnered with iFixit as well, so you are able to, well, check the iFixit manual to how to replace the internal battery, and also buy internal batteries as well. And it's a gaming headset, you know what that means, RGB everywhere. So we got 8 customizable lighting zones with your 16.8 million colors to choose from. So you can personalize it from, well, you desire color we got here. We can go blue, we can go all the colors to match your, well, your setup, your mood. And you can see I keep pointing to the side because different of the previous generation of Logitech headphones that used to have the RGB at the front, and they will create that glare in the monitor, or if you're a streamer, it will look a bit like glary. Now they got it on the sides, so I think it looks more classy, to be honest, on the side instead to on the front. But wherever you are gaming, streaming, or just chilling, the G522 let you express your style. So you can choose from all the line-in patterns to match your vibe, however you desire. I also want to highlight Logitech's commitment to sustainability. So the G522 Lightspeed headset is made with 27% certificate post-consumer recycled plastic, and the packaging is entire paper-based. So it's a step in the right direction for reducing e-waste. And Logitech has a goal to reduce their Scope 1 and 2 emissions to near zero by 2030. And I think it's great to see them pushing boundaries when it comes to eco-friendly gaming tech. Now, comfort-wise, I did mention they're super flexible, and I have been trying it for a couple of days. My wife have been trying it for a couple of days. Wearing it for a long period of time. I've been playing music and watching YouTube with my phone, also playing some games and editing certain videos, and they feel comfortable. They feel very good, to be honest. Like previous headphones I've been using, the inside, the ear cup, the plastic at the behind the fabric will touch my ear, and after maybe 1 hour, 2, maybe 3 hours, they become a little bit irritated. But not with this ones. They do feel like they're holding. The suspension band feels quite good, and I remember having a similar headphones in the past with suspension band. It was not that strong. This ones feel super strong and super aesthetic. So to wrap it up, my first impression on the G522, they are really, really positive. Logitech have made some incredible upgrades with this headset, especially in the terms of comfort, sound, customizably, more RGB. And as I said, you can change the band and you can change the ear cups to more colors that Logitech have told me they are to come. But yeah, you can personalize it however you want. And they do deliver. They do deliver. So wherever you are gaming, streaming, or just listening to music, the G522 delivers a premium experience at a reasonable price. So keep an eye out, because availability is in June 16, hitting all stores for £139. And I will have my full review coming soon, so you can see a little bit in details after putting it to a real test. So just make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell so you don't miss my full review on the G522. But just let me know in the comment section below so far. If you got any questions, just feel free to ask. As always, thanks for watching, guys. My first impressions on the G522 for Logitech. I'm Checo Tech, and I will see you on the next one. Adios.
You be tripping, I don't know what about. So what's the problem right now?
Hello guys and gals, me Mutahar, and you know, ladies and gentlemen, I feel like today is going to be a video where I talk about Nintendo, and you know, I'm always like, man, they cannot defend this, okay? They cannot defend this, okay? The fanboys cannot. And then part of me dies when I realize they absolutely will find a way to defend this. So, ladies and gentlemen, to give you an idea, I read this headline: Nintendo reserves the right to brick your console following unauthorized use. So immediately when I saw this, there was a red flag in my head. Okay, that could either be absolutely overblown, or it's not. And if I'm making a video about it, there's a good chance, ladies and gentlemen, it is not overblown. So there are 3 big gaming companies out there that make gaming hardware, consoles. You've got Microsoft, you've got Sony, you've got Nintendo. And all 3 of these people have absolutely introduced things that I don't agree with on their systems. But today we're looking at an update to something known as an end-user license agreement that, again, is something we all sign when we play video games, buy a piece of hardware, so on and so forth. So Nintendo introduced a few things into this that I'm not a big fan of, okay? So let's cover the lightest thing here, okay? So one of them is the breach and termination and dispute resolution. So dispute resolution is pretty important, okay? To give you an idea about it, what Nintendo has basically said over here is that you are not allowed to do a class action, okay? What you have to do is arbitrate with Nintendo directly on their home turf if you have an issue, okay? Now, obviously, this is not good. Companies absolutely hate class action because class actions, much like the Sony versus like the Sony versus the people, where Sony once introduced a feature called Other OS, they removed it. Sony was sued by class action, and ultimately, all the people that came together with their grievances, right, through the law firms that represented them, the law firm that did, they ended up getting like a few bucks back. But obviously, Sony lost a fair bit of money just, again, by doing something that was stupid, which was removing features from an actual system. Now, I would say that most companies absolutely hate when people come together to exert some level of legal force on one of these big monolith agencies. So obviously with Nintendo, they're really not a huge fan of that. And you are not allowed to class action anymore, okay? That is not good by Nintendo standards. So if you want to take Nintendo to court, you better be willing to do it by yourself with your own money against a company that is probably one of the richest corporations in the realm of video gaming, okay? Now, of course, the thing that really sort of like drove me out was the ability for Nintendo to add restrictions to their services and their devices. Okay, so we're gonna read this through, and we're gonna try to understand what goes on. Okay, so according to the license, subject to the terms of agreements, Nintendo grants you a non-exclusive, non-transferable, revocable license to use the Nintendo account services solely for your personal and non-commercial use. Okay, so that is like the account you make to download shit from Nintendo to play like games online and do anything on their online service. Okay, that's pretty standard. Like that's what most online services do. Without limitation, you agree that you may not publish, copy, modify, reverse engineer, release, rent, decompile, disassemble, distribute, offer for sale, or create derivative works of any product of the Nintendo account services. B. Bypass, modify, decrypt, defeat, tamper with, or otherwise circumvent any of the functions or protections of the Nintendo service accounts through use of any hardware or software that would cause the Nintendo account services to operate other than in accordance with the documentations and intended use, okay? So I guess hacking on their service, modifying a Nintendo Switch with an exploit that possibly could ruin the experience for other people online, I suppose. C. Obtain, install, or use any unauthorized copies of Nintendo account services, or exploit the Nintendo account services in any manner other than use them in accordance with the applicable documentation and intended use. So far, it's all got to do with the online service, right? Like, which kind of makes sense. In each case, without Nintendo's written consent or express authorization, so Nintendo doesn't need to, Nintendo don't need your consent, okay? They can just walk in and do what they need to. Or unless otherwise expressly permitted by applicable law, you acknowledge that if you fail to comply with the foregoing restrictions, Nintendo may render the Nintendo account service and or the applicable Nintendo device, the console, permanently unusable in whole or in part. Motherfucker, what is your problem, brother? What is wrong with you? What? All right, we reached to a point, this might be one of the worst console launches that, at least from like a game owner perspective, that I've seen, okay? First off, okay, the game key card stuff, fine, whatever. You can vote with your wallet and say, I'll just buy the copies of games that are actually completed. I bought a game known as Stalker, like Zone of the, let me actually find it. Stalker, like this Stalker collection on the Switch. And it's all 3 Stalker games, like, actually on a game card. Actually, I bought it from a local game store, and, they had this Japanese copy in print. And it's an amazing collection, all right? I vote with my wallet. I just buy physical media that actually is respectful. Okay, I don't buy, physical media that is, like, in part, okay, crippled media, so to speak, right? Like, where you put it into the system and it's like, oh my God. Here, download this 80 fucking gigabyte game. We could have fit it on the disc, but we just chose not to, okay? Microsoft just did that with that Doom game that's coming out, Dark Ages. Could have fit on the disc, chose not to, okay? Instead, they produced e-waste en masse, and for a company that, like, loves to jerk off carbon fucking neutrality, I'm so shocked that they love polluting the environment with this actual goddamn e-waste. But you know what? You can vote with your wallet. Whatever, fine. It is what it is. $80 games. Okay, maybe you don't wait for them to go on sale. Vote with your wallet. Bro, the console can be bricked at their discretion is insanity. And then it's like, oh, well, we're going to take away your right to sue. So if you do want to sue them, you can't bundle up with other people and sue the company. You have to go mano a mano with Nintendo Legal yourself, which you might as well, okay? Just take a fucking sledgehammer to your balls at this point. That's how effective it is. Now, I'm sure there's going to be the defense, but Muda, I'm not going to hack my system, and then Nintendo won't do anything to me. You know, this actually comes down to a real fundamental answer. Should a company be allowed to destroy the product that you buy? Because think about it, right? Let's say that the mere act of firing up a Nintendo Switch meant that you connect to Nintendo online services. Now, let's say that you run custom firmware on your Switch, and I guess maybe you're interacting with Nintendo online services, whatever, but you're not using it to pirate video games. Maybe you want to run like emulators on your brand new Switch 2 when it's hackable, if it's hackable. And you want to run other things. I'm sure people will say, but what about the pirates, Muda? What about the people hacking in video games? Yeah, they're terrible people, and you know, you can just remove them from accessing the network as a whole, right? Like, much in the way the Xbox 360 would do it, or the PlayStation 3, if you were running a hack, if you were, you know, blatantly being a douchebag, Sony and Microsoft would just remove you from their networks. They would console ban you, but you could still actually use your console to play video games, even though you lost the online functionality. If they were pretty upfront about that, maybe. But the fact that they can say they can brick your system in whole, not just in part, in whole is also mentioned, right? Which means the entire system becomes unusable. That is a question I think people need to ask, okay? Now, I don't think EULAs like this should be entirely legal. To be fair, I want to see what an actual court would say if this was tested. But it kind of reminds me, like, you know, should a company be allowed to just take away your game, to take away your system that you paid money for, okay? You know, a while back, all right, actually not even really a long time ago, a car manufacturer by the name of BMW, I'm sure you watching have probably heard of it. They had a subscription service for you to pay a subscription fee to use the actual heated seats in your car. Now, you might be like, wow, that's stupid, okay? The heated seats exist. Why do I have to pay a subscription service fee to use heated seats? Now, let's say that there was a BMW hack, right? You could just put it onto a flash drive, stick it into your car, and get access to all of the stuff that you've already paid for without needing BMW's dogshit DRM and blocking. Now, let's say BMW detected that you did that, right? And they were like, all right, let's just brick this dude's car. Not just deny you from accessing BMW servers for software updates in the future or downloading map updates. No. Just straight brick your car. Okay, like, motherfucker, your car cannot start. The car cannot move forward. It is just a bricked machine sitting on your driveway or wherever. Should that be okay? Should a company be allowed to do that? I disagree. I think when you buy a Nintendo Switch, right, if I want to hack my Nintendo Switch and I'm not bothering anybody on the Nintendo Switch online framework, I don't think any company should have the legal right to tell me what I can and cannot do with their fucking device, okay? You can tell me what I can and cannot do with your, you know, online software when I'm interacting with your servers and other players. But I really don't think a company should have the legal right to tell you what you can't do with your system, okay? But ultimately, it seems like that is the case, which is one of the reasons why, like, you know, I really will always say the Steam Deck is the more superior option over anything Nintendo offers. And, you know, this thing doesn't sit on my desk as a prop. I actually am using it. When you see it on my desk, it means that, you know, I did play a video game on it that day when I was recording. In fact, literally, if I just fire up my actual Switch, you'll probably see, like, I have Bully running on it, like Bully on the PlayStation 2 emulating on my Steam Deck. This is an unintended feature. Valve made the Steam Deck, but the thing is, Valve does not own the Steam Deck. Valve doesn't own this specific Steam Deck anymore. Valve sold me this, and I can choose to use their operating system, interact with their servers, or I can blow everything off of this and install Windows or my own custom version of Linux. In fact, what Valve didn't intend with this device was for me to install PCSX2, as I just showed you, run a ROM of Bully, and play it on my device, okay? They did not intend for that, but yet it is my choice. It is my freedom to do that on a device that I purchased. If Valve decided, you know what, we don't like people emulating on the Steam Deck, we're just gonna nuke every device remotely. That would be a serious problem, and I'm sure you would understand why that's a fucking serious problem. What Nintendo is doing, in my opinion, is basically forcing themselves into a part of your life, into a part of your ownership that I don't think they have a legal right to. 10 years ago, one of the videos that I saw floating around was one by Murder of Crows. And I'm glad that I could dig it up recently because he showcases one really disgusting thing. He buys a Nintendo Wii U, and one of the things is when he's firing up his Nintendo Wii U, he basically gets assaulted by the Wii U into a end user license agreement. So he can't literally say, I cancel, I don't agree to that. He has to click the OK button, which takes him to this page where the only option he has is to agree, okay? Now, remember, he bought the system, he probably bought a game or two, and he just wants to play his video games. Now, according to this EULA, you could refund the console, like just send it back to Nintendo and they'd give you the whole refund, which, you could avoid, absolutely signing this. But again, all right, even when he tries to quick launch a video game, it doesn't work. Nintendo has forced this EULA onto him, right? And I don't think any company should just be allowed to do that. When you buy their hardware, when you buy their video game, I really do personally believe that at that point, they really shouldn't have any control over what the fuck you do with your system unless you're connecting it to the online and interacting with their servers in real time or other players, right? That's all obvious, demarcation point we all can agree on. But yeah, I saw this floating around and I thought it was probably one of the most disgusting things that Nintendo has done in recent times. And again, it's not the only disgusting thing that Nintendo has even done. Just a quick reminder, Nintendo, when it comes to their competition, the indie game scene even, right? Pokemon is one of the largest fucking media brands in the world. And literally, they are actually going after, people who are making better versions, better similar products to their own, right? So Pal World, for anybody that doesn't remember, I talked about their lawsuit that was happening, but recently they actually said a few new things, right? So they said they'd like to express their sincere gratitude, which obviously we understand. The litigation is ongoing. So they remain involved in prolonged legal proceedings regarding alleged patent infringement. So on November 30th, they introduced a patch for the game, and that removed the ability to summon pals by throwing the pal spheres, which was, I guess, the Pokeball analog. And they changed it to a static summon next to the player. But next, they also said, we regret to inform our players that with the implementation of patch 0.5.5, they have to make another compromise. And what's that compromise? From that patch, gliding will be performed using a glider rather than with pals. Pals in the player's team will still provide passive buffs to gliding. So remember the whole thing where you can just get on top of your flying pal and just fly around the map? Well, apparently it seems like Nintendo has, I guess, the patent to that game mechanic, and other gamers cannot use mounts in a 3D environment at all. It seems like that is against against Nintendo's kosher beliefs, right? You have to absolutely, remove your gameplay feature so Nintendo can be appeased. And the thing about this is super baffling because, if we're gonna really be honest, mounting an animal, I guess in this case is more like mounting a Pokemon that you've captured or like a monster you've captured. Mounting creatures is something that I've seen in other games like World of Warcraft even, right? Other actual features, other actual games rather, where I've seen this feature set play out. But to see Nintendo be so litigious about it is actually insane, especially against a company that literally is, by their own comparisons, an independent company. And sure, we can say that Pal World is very deceptively close to Pokemon, but it's not, okay? It's still a parody product. And to see Nintendo be so hard about this instead of actually creating a video game that can rival Pal World in terms of how much it resonates with the, fan base, I think that's the most telling thing right there. But you know what? Honestly, I wish I could be shocked, but I'm not. Nintendo has done a lot of bad shit, but I really do think the ability for them to, I guess now, destroy your system, okay? Because that's what it seems like from reading this. And I know that people will say, but what if it doesn't happen? It's not what if it doesn't happen. It's what if it can happen. Which it seems, according to reading all of this legalese and everybody else, already looking at this as well too, it seems like Nintendo has an even further grip on what you can and cannot do with the shit that you buy. Now, if you want to contest this, okay, the easiest route, and I'll always say this, is vote with your wallet, right? Don't get a Switch 2. Maybe just get the Steam Deck, okay? A lot of those big games that are coming out on the actual Switch, games like Super Mario Kart or Mario World Kart, yeah, I mean, that might be the one exclusive, but generally speaking, the only game that I would be interested for on the Switch 2 would be Cyberpunk 2077. A game that I have a DRM-free copy of from GOG that I've also just installed onto my Steam Deck. And sure, it might not run as pretty as the actual Switch 2, but this system is here in the now. And it actually is respectful comparing itself to the actual Nintendo Switch 2. But hey, that's just where my thoughts are. Wild shit. Again, if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. I am out. You might be like, why does this guy have this big ass shit-eating grin on his face, huh? Well, ladies and gentlemen, there's two things today. I just turned 43, and also, ladies and gentlemen, god damn, Epic Games is actually winning against Apple. Actually did a pretty good backhand pimp slap. It's always a funny day when I see big tech companies take a massive L, and the world kind of shifts because of it, right? Now, Apple, me and Apple have never been the best of homies, obviously, as many of you guys can imagine, right? I've ragged on them through the years, but I've also given them their flowers whenever they needed it, right? I guess that's the saying these days. Now, I use an iPhone not primarily because I enjoy the iPhone platform. There's two things, iMessage, FaceTime, that, I utilize with other iPhone people. Some people that will not consider switching to Android because it may be too difficult to learn, even though not the case. But, I really don't care what phone company you use or what phone brand you use. At the end of the day, as long as this thing can browse the internet, read an email, play some goddamn gotcha games every once in a while, because I know we're all degenerates like that. That's all that really matters, right? Who cares? You can have the cheapest phone or the most expensive phone. It really doesn't matter. But, whether you're iOS or Team Android, I think we all agree watching this channel, we should own our phones and be allowed to put whatever we want on our phones, okay? Now, in some countries, like the European Union, okay, some regions of the world, I wouldn't say the EU is a country, Apple lost so significantly that you, the user, can install third-party app stores onto your phone and install emulators, play Fortnite, which is the focus of today's story, okay? Now, 4 years ago in 2020, Epic Games decided to do the